Hi, thanks to all of you who've liked, subscribed and shared this week. It's so exciting to feel like we're finally growing. So in the last video, which you can find a link to in the comments, we talked about the danger of labels and the wealth of behaviours that it can cloak. I asked you on Facebook and Instagram to share your experiences of what Reactive meant for you, and I was overwhelmed by your responses. Some really great descriptions that made it clear that Reactive is many things to you, that one size definitely doesn't fit all. So today we're going to have another look at reactive behaviour so that we can understand it a little better. So what did you say in your responses? First, you shared your experiences about walking outside. That's a big problem for many of us. Many of you shared the very typical experience of a dog who can't cope when they see another dog. Many of you expressed fears that when other dogs were off lead and they were out of control, that they were going to run up to your dog and your dog was going to have a reaction. I think Deb said it best when she said a small event equals big behaviour. I think that just about covered all the barking and the lunging on lead that we expect with reactive behaviour. Barking didn't quite cover it enough though, did it? We needed kind of like a scale of barking from 1 to 10, with 1 being the occasional woof, maybe even something lower than that. This morning we went outside, there was a small Shih Tzu and a man walking past, and Heston did the smallest of growls, which, you know, even smaller than the barking behaviours. Definitely not a big behaviour for a small event there. We had a big event and a small behaviour. So with 10 at the other scale being a prolonged volley of barking, you know, the dog can't stop barking the moment he sees another dog or another person. So we really need to think about intensity when we're talking about and when we're describing behaviour. I'm going to take a moment as well to say the sound of that barking might be very different. So first we have what I'm going to describe badly as angry barking. Then we've got panic barking. There's barking caused by frustration. There's excited barking. This is a discussion for later webinars where we'll sort out and tease out the problems that we can find with the different things that underlie behaviour and the different functions of reactive behaviour, as well as what drives different kinds of barking and how it sounds. Suffice to say for now that barking, even a simple behaviour like barking, might be very driven by very different needs. Barking and lunging at other dogs isn't confined to just being on walks. So some dogs are also responding to dogs that they see or hear on screen, or from the car, or from the window. So I had that epic moment the other day where the dogs were really excited. I put them in the car, I'd gone back to lock up, and as I'd gone back to lock up, a man walked past with Poodle, and my dogs were going nuts out of the window. And I went out, I have to say, the alert and alarm barking protocol that I'll share in the links as well is great for that. So I said, thank you, great job, and my dog stopped barking instantly, which really made me doubt the intensity of that behaviour. It was certainly very big behaviour, but it seemed to just sort of stop on a coin there. So we can split barking and lunging into 3 categories that you'll see today. So we've got barking in the home, we've got barking in the car, we've got barking out on walks. So when you think about your dog or the dog that you work with, that will be different for each one. So barking in the home can be split into 4. So first we've got barking at digital dogs. That might be dogs they see or hear on TV. They don't even have to be real dogs. It might be dogs that they hear on your phone or on your laptop. So I know some of you struggle with that situation. Barking at the occasional real life dog that they see or hear outside the home. So I get a lot of this, or not so much these days thanks to the alert and alarm barking protocol. So usually this is just the sound of other dogs that cause them to respond. So say for instance they might bark in response to another dog barking. We've got a new dog that's moved into our neighbourhood about 4 months ago. Let me tell you, the whole lot of dogs who now fit into this category as a result. The third type of dog who barks in home is the Vigilant Dog, who finds perches to surveil the neighbourhood. So this is my dog Tilly. Every morning I pass a home with French windows where there's a small Shih Tzu who sits looking out most of the day, surveilling the neighbourhood and barking at any dogs that go past. So these are the dogs who spend a lot of the day vigilantly trying to spot any outsiders, rather than just responding to the dogs who are outside. And the fourth type of dog who barks in the home is a dog who struggles when they're in the garden. So if a dog went past the garden, they'd respond by barking, maybe running to the fence, running the fence line and so on. We find a lot of this. And it's important to know that each dog will have their own individual profile. So Liddy doesn't respond to dogs on the TV, on phone, on my laptop. She just doesn't care. She will respond if she hears another dog barking, but she doesn't bark back. She kind of looks at me like, oh, what's going on? What's out there? Do I need to be concerned? But whereas Heston will respond in kind. So, however, Lydia doesn't also spend much of the day listening or watching out for them. She'd rather not have to have dogs barking around her at all. She would struggle, however, if we were outside and a dog walked past the garden, if she could see them and we were in the garden as well. So there are also dogs who struggle with other dogs passing outside the car, as I said with my dogs. And my dogs, they only don't do that very often. We have to drive through the estate to get anywhere, and there's lots of dogs when we're going out. And generally speaking, we'll talk about this later, but sometimes there's a sensitivity when dogs are excited or when they're fearful, and those behaviours are more likely to come out when they are excited or they're fearful, when they're aroused. So these are the dogs when we've got a dog who's barking in the car, who if I go to my vet car park and just stop there, within an hour I'm certain to hear at least 80% of the dogs doing this. So these are the dogs who are barking when they see other dogs walking in the street, and also maybe who spend their time looking out of the window for other dogs as well. Then there are what people I think typically think of as reactive dogs. These are the dogs who bark and lunge at other dogs when they're out on walks. So often people will say it doesn't matter how far away the dog is, that their dog will just start barking and lunging as soon as they catch sight of the other dog. Other dogs are more precise. They might cope with seeing other dogs on a walk, but if the dog is behind a fence, they might really struggle. All of these behaviours were directed towards other dogs. And although lots of people describe behaviour directed to other dogs, a few of you describe behaviour directed towards humans as well. So because it was less frequently described, I tend to think this is probably what people might class as aggressive behaviour. So even so, we probably find our dogs maybe cope better with digital humans on screen than dogs on phones and laptops, but they may struggle to cope with people outside the home. Some dogs, though, really struggle with movement on screen, particularly people as playing sport. So rugby, football, even ice skating can cause problems for some dogs. We may find our dogs are actively watching out for people outside the home, or we may find that our dogs are barking and lunging at guests to the home. So they may struggle with both of those scenarios, not just people walking by, but also with people trying to come into the home. And we may find that our dogs struggle to cope with the humans that they see when they're out of the home, and that may be humans they see from the car, maybe humans they see on walks. It might also depend on what the human is doing. So jogging, cycling tend to be recurring themes for my clients who've got reactive dogs. So yesterday we saw a man marching, I kid you not, like marching. My dogs gave him a bit of a look, and I'll be honest, I also did. It may also be that there's a certain group of people that the dog was never truly familiarised with when young enough, such as people from different cultures or people wearing different kind of clothes. So many of these behaviours have got something in common. The dogs don't know the other dog or the other human, or they don't know them that well. They might know them, but not very well. Perhaps they know the other dog or person, relatively well, but they still don't feel comfortable with them. And we might class such behaviour as stranger danger behaviours. So a lot of these behaviours are behaviours that seem to happen right at the very instant that they meet and then stop later on. So one of my clients this week was talking about how her dog seems to stop after a period of time. We'll talk about that too, because I'm not exactly sure that they're always learning to cope. I think they realise that the behaviour isn't getting anywhere, and that sometimes can be problematic. So beyond behaviour directed towards unfamiliar dogs and humans, some dogs also react to other animals. They might be on screen, it might be in real life, it might be domestic animals like cats, it might be livestock like sheep, horses, chickens, cows, it could be wildlife including small prey species like rats, squirrels and mice. We had a problem the other morning, not necessarily a problem, but a little interesting swiftling hedgehog. And if you've ever seen hedgehogs moving, this hedgehog was moving very hedgehog-like, and it caused a lot of curiosity for my dogs. But it might also be bigger wildlife like wild boar or deer. Dogs who struggle with other animals might also struggle with abstract depictions of other animals, maybe still images or puppets or cartoons. So some of these may be 2D on screen, others may be 3D. Some dogs also respond to objects, so we can call these non-social stimuli because not living. So in a way, abstract things like puppets or cartoons do fall into this category because they don't interact, they're not alive. But this draws our attention to the fact that some dogs struggle with human-shaped non-social stimuli. Statues can be a bit of a problem. I'm sure you've all seen the cute videos of spaniels dropping balls at the feet of statues, but I'm willing to bet those statues get barked at from time to time as well. Other things don't seem to be quite so human-shaped, but I have known dogs who struggle with scarecrows and stone crosses, and one dog in our village who barks at the statue of Jesus every single day, and also the war memorial. So I often choose kind of quiet spots to start working with reactive dogs, and graveyards are a very good venue for that. But let me tell you, there are also dogs who struggle with angels and crosses. So these static objects are often human-shaped or animal-shaped, and I've known dogs who attacked cat statues and have been freaked out by all kinds of garden ornaments and fire and things like that. It's not interactive, you know, it doesn't interact back, but it can certainly be something that can be a problem for some dogs too. So most dogs though who struggle with non-social stuff tend to struggle more with moving things than static things. So here we might think of dogs who respond to cars, bicycles, lawnmowers, wheelbarrows, tractors, other moving machinery. Sometimes it's moving objects like skateboards, scooters, wheelchairs, shopping trolleys, push chairs, and don't forget these can be on screen too. And there are dogs who I know who struggle to watch Formula 1. So then there are the oddities. You can see my dog Liddy here in this video, it's up on YouTube, and she was very fearful, curious about a shed snake skin that we'd found, where Heston, when you'll see from the video, just kind of comes out and he's like, what is this, can I eat it? And then decides it's obviously nothing offensive. And Liddy also struggles with a hulled maize cob, and I've seen dogs struggling to make sense of pumpkins, leaves, even flower pots. So dogs can struggle with all kinds of strange objects. I also think it's important at this point to separate out what's normal. It's normal for dogs to struggle to cope sometimes with other dogs, especially when those dogs are off lead and rampaging up to your dog. That's normal behaviour. If your dogs don't like that, that's normal. It would be the same reaction that I would have in TGI Fridays if a very dirty child ran up to me and tried to grab me and smother me with chocolate mousse. You know, I would just feel uncomfortable about the whole experience. It's normal for dogs to feel uncomfortable or excited when visitors arrive. We're going to talk about so much about that. And we'll be running through all of the things that are absolutely and perfectly normal in the coming weeks. Some of them are not acceptable in our communities, but it doesn't mean that they're not normal for dogs to do. And that's something that we're going to iron out as well. Other dogs struggle, they kind of manage okay until they're in a state of emotional arousal. So often Heston, for instance, doesn't ever bark at anything unless he's excited, and then when he's excited because we're going out for a walk, everything sets him off. So these things can be positive like excitement, but they can also be negative like fear. So whatever they see when they're in this emotional state can cause a much bigger reaction than usual. So these dogs are easily sensitized, and that could be to social stuff like people, dogs, other animals, or it could be to non-social stuff. So my boy Heston, as I said, he's a bit like this. He'll cope with most things, but if he's excited because we're on our way to a walk, he might struggle. So he doesn't normally have a problem with people on bicycles, for instance, but I remember a time maybe a few years ago when we were driving and we had to drive past a load of cyclists, and he gave them, a bit of a telling off. So we'll be talking a lot about sensitisation in the coming weeks and months, because it's really fundamental in our understanding of reactive behaviour. So there are many, many reasons behind these behaviours, and the reasons are complex and sometimes very different. It's really going to be very important that we understand these reasons in order to help our dogs. One thing is very clear though, there are dogs who respond because of more positive emotions, like excitement or even predatory behaviours. Not being able to do so can cause frustration, and I see lots of dogs who are labelled as reactive and are actually just frustrated. So that again tips their response into the negative. Frustration can be that crossover when our needs are thwarted and we don't get what we want, we're not allowed to chase the cat, that then our behaviour might look reactive because we might be barking or lunging. So these dogs are going to need a slightly different approach than dogs whose behaviour is driven by emotions such as fear. And that's why, coming back to what I was saying in the previous video, it's really difficult to label dogs and say just reactive when they can be driven by such extremes of behaviour. And we need to be really cautious about labelling our dog as one, when they can be both, you know. So Liddy has positive emotions and sometimes frustration. She copes very well with frustration, where I might see a little bit about, she doesn't bark, but she might lunge on lead, or she might be pulling. She might find it really hard to manage herself, and her executive functioning skills go out of the window. And these dogs are going to need a different approach in those instances than the times when they're afraid. So as we go through our journey, I'll be rolling out specific materials for dogs who are driven by excitement, predation, impulsivity and frustration. And I'll also be rolling out preventative materials for young dogs to help them prepare for those of you who've got puppies, adolescents, as well as helping you understand how to do restorative training and catch up, as well as knowing how to navigate life's inevitable attempts to derail our progress. I went out at 5 o'clock this morning to get a walk in before we went. I started work. We go to the dog park later. But what happened when we went outside the door? There was a cat immediately the moment we got out there, and then a man walked past with the Shih Tzu who sits in the window barking at people all day. And then on our way round we saw the same cat 5 times, as well as a field of sheep who were quite excited by all of the movement at 5 a.m. in the morning. So we're going to be looking at how we can better navigate life's inevitable attempts to derail our progress. And we'll be looking more at the negative emotions behind behaviour as well. And I really wish that I'd known 10 years ago what I know now. So as we go through our journey, whatever the reasons, it's worthwhile considering if you've got a dog who responds only to other dogs, to unfamiliar humans, or to non-social stimuli. So you may have a dog like Liddy who's a bit of all three. So you're going to be able to download this graphic on my social media channels and also from the link below, so feel free to share it. That would be great if you did. And in the next Lighten Up seminar, I'm going to be sharing a definition with you. I think that's going to blow your mind. It really helps us understand reactive behaviour, and I'm going to share a little analogy that I've taken from a book that I read recently. So we're going to be looking at the 10 most common reasons that dogs react to have these big behaviours in response to such small events. And don't forget to subscribe if you want regular updates on this content. I'm not cross-posting across various different social media channels, so if you want to check us out on Facebook, you'll find things on there that are not on YouTube, vice versa, and also subscribe to the blog. So bigger things are coming, so make sure you're ahead of the game, and thanks for joining us.